What would you think if I told you that the secret to unimaginable wealth is not found in the sweat of your brow or the balance of your bank account, but in the invisible, pulsing vibrations of your own mind? Imagine a world where every skyscraper, every life-saving medicine, and every multi-billion-dollar empire began as nothing more than a flickering shadow of a thought. A mental blueprint held with such ferocious intensity that the universe had no choice but to manifest it into physical reality. This is the staggering premise of Napoleon Hill's masterpiece, a work born from a 20-year crusade to distill the essence of success from the titans of industry. The journey begins in 1908, with a penniless young journalist standing before the legendary Andrew Carnegie, the richest man of his age. Carnegie, with the piercing gaze of a man who saw through the fabric of fate, issued a challenge. He would reveal the formula for power if the young man committed 2 decades to studying the minds of 500 giants, men like Henry Ford, Thomas Edison, and Alexander Graham Bell. Napoleon Hill accepted in 29 seconds, setting in motion a narrative that would bridge the gap between ancient wisdom and modern psychology. At the heart of this retelling is the transformative truth that thoughts are things. Hill introduces us to Edwin C. Barnes, a man who possessed a desire so consuming that it bypassed the need for logic. Barnes did not merely wish to work for the great inventor Thomas Edison, he intended to become his business partner. When he arrived at the laboratory in Orange, New Jersey, he looked like a common tramp, yet his mind was already vibrating with the frequency of a mogul. Edison later remarked that Barnes stood before him looking like a beggar, but his expression carried the unmistakable weight of a man who would not be denied. Barnes spent years in menial labor, waiting for his moment, never wavering. When the opportunity finally arrived, wrapped in the guise of a failed product that Edison's seasoned salesman refused to touch, Barnes seized it. He succeeded because he had burned every bridge behind him, leaving no retreat. He did not have a plan B. He had only the ironclad resolve to win or perish. This story serves as the visceral foundation for the first principle, desire. The analysis of Barnes's triumph reveals that success is not a matter of luck, but a psychological state known as success consciousness. Most people fail because they are failure conscious, constantly looking for reasons why things won't work. The lesson here is that the mind is a magnetic field. It attracts the people, the tools, and the circumstances that harmonize with its dominant thoughts. To transform a dream into gold, one must follow a rigid, 6-step alchemy, fixing the exact amount of money in the mind, determining the price to be paid, establishing a deadline, creating a plan, writing it down, and reciting it daily with the fervor of a religious zealot. This is not mere positive thinking, it is the systematic programming of the subconscious mind. Hill illustrates this power through the harrowing and miraculous story of his own son, who was born without any physical ears or the internal machinery of hearing. Defying every medical expert who branded the boy a deaf-mute for life, Hill refused to accept the reality of the flesh. He spent years whispering into his son's mind, planting the seed of a burning desire to hear. He turned a handicap into a competitive advantage, telling the boy that his silence would make him a master of concentration. Eventually, the boy's desire reached such a fever pitch that it triggered a biological anomaly, allowing him to hear through bone conduction and eventually lead a normal life. This narrative reinforces the terrifyingly beautiful truth that the only limitations are the ones we voluntarily host within our own skulls. As the narrative deepens, it moves into the ethereal realm of faith, the eternal elixir that gives life to thought. Hill describes faith as a state of mind that can be induced or created by affirmation or repeated instructions to the subconscious. This is where the concept of autosuggestion emerges as the bridge between the conscious and the subconscious. Imagine the subconscious as a fertile garden. If you do not intentionally plant the seeds of your choosing, the wind will scatter the weeds of doubt and fear to grow in their place. The analysis here suggests that we are the masters of our earthly destiny because we have the power to influence our own subconscious. The story of Henry Ford highlights this, a man with little formal education who was once sued for being an ignorant pacifist. When the lawyers peppered him with general knowledge questions to prove his incompetence, Ford pointed a finger and reminded them that he didn't need to know everything. He had a row of buttons on his desk that could summon men with the specific knowledge he required. This leads to the principle of specialized knowledge. Wealth does not respond to general knowledge, which is abundant and cheap. It responds to knowledge that is organized and intelligently directed through practical plans of action toward a definite end. Ford proved that an educated man is not one whose head is full of facts, but one who has developed the faculties of his mind to acquire anything he wants without violating the rights of others. The intensity of the script escalates as it enters the workshop of the mind, the imagination. Hill distinguishes between synthetic imagination, which rearranges old ideas into new combinations, and creative imagination, which acts as an antenna for the infinite intelligence. He tells the enchanting story of the enchanted kettle, where a country doctor traded an old kettle and a secret formula to a clerk named Asa Candler for $500. Candler didn't just see a sugary syrup, he saw a global empire. That formula became Coca-Cola, a testament to the fact that an idea, when backed by imagination and persistence, is worth more than 1,000 years of hard labor. The lesson is clear: ideas are the starting points of all fortunes, but an idea without a plan is a ghost. Hill emphasizes organized planning, the process of coalescing one's desire into a concrete map. The narrative warns of the 3 feet from gold tragedy, where a gold miner gave up just 36 inches away from a massive vein because he stopped when he encountered temporary defeat. He sold his machinery to a junk man who had the foresight to consult a mining engineer. The junk man made millions because he understood that defeat is often a signal that your plan was flawed, not that your goal was impossible. The psychological tension of the book peaks during the discussion of decision, the mastery of procrastination. Analyzing over 25,000 men and women who had experienced failure, Hill discovered that lack of decision was near the top of the list. The titans of industry make decisions quickly and change them slowly, if at all. Those who fail make decisions slowly and change them frequently. This leads into the unrelenting principle of persistence. Persistence is to the character of man what carbon is to steel. It is the power of will. Without it, you are defeated before you start. With it, you are invincible. The narrative describes persistence as a state of mind that can be cultivated by a definiteness of purpose, self-reliance, and the habit of surrounding oneself with a mastermind group. The mastermind is the coordination of knowledge and effort, in a spirit of harmony, between 2 or more people, for the attainment of a definite purpose. Hill explains that when 2 minds come together, they create a third, invisible, intangible force, a third mind that possesses more power than the sum of its parts. This is the secret behind the success of the great industrial cartels in the founding of the United States. The narrative now shifts toward the more mysterious and potent forces of the human psyche, exploring the mystery of sex transmutation. Hill argues that the desire for sex is the most powerful of human desires, and when this energy is harnessed and redirected from physical expression into creative and professional outlets, it can lift a person to the status of a genius. The analysis suggests that most men do not achieve great success until they are 40 or 50 because they dissipate their vital energies in overindulgence of physical impulses. By redirecting this magnetic energy, one develops a vibrant personality and an aura of authority that commands the world's attention. This is followed by the exploration of the subconscious mind, the mysterious connecting link between the finite mind of man and infinite intelligence. The subconscious never sleeps, it works 24 hours a day, translating your dominant thoughts into their physical equivalent. If you feed it fear, it will manifest poverty. If you feed it desire, it will manifest wealth. This leads to the creative vision of the brain, which Hill describes as both a broadcasting and a receiving station for the vibrations of thought. The story builds toward a crescendo of spiritual and psychological mastery, leading to the 6th sense, the apex of the philosophy, where one can receive warnings of impending dangers and hunches of opportunities through a connection to the universal mind. But before one can reach this pinnacle, they must face the ultimate gatekeepers, the 6 ghosts of fear. These are the shadows that haunt the human heart: the fear of poverty, criticism, ill health, loss of love, old age, and death. The narrative describes these fears as nothing more than states of mind, and because they are states of mind, they are subject to control and direction. The lesson is that man can create nothing which he does not first conceive in the form of a thought impulse. As we prepare to move deeper into the specific mechanics of these principles, the tension is palpable. The blueprint for greatness is laid bare. But the question remains, does the listener have the courage to seize the controls of their own mind? The transition from a life of lack to a life of abundance is not a physical journey, but a mental revolution. The characters of history have proven it. The science of the mind supports it. And the philosophy of Carnegie demands it. We are standing at the threshold of the secret, ready to walk through the fire of self-discipline into the light of absolute achievement. The narrative intensifies as it delves into the power plant of human achievement, the mastermind. Imagine the collective energy of the world's greatest thinkers being funneled into a single objective, creating a psychic synergy that transcends individual limitation. Napoleon Hill recounts the staggering success of Andrew Carnegie, who attributed his entire fortune not to his own personal genius but to his mastermind group, a circle of 50 men with whom he surrounded himself for the definite purpose of manufacturing and marketing steel. This wasn't merely a business meeting, it was a spiritual fusion. Hill explains that no two minds ever come together without, thereby, creating a third, invisible, intangible force which may be likened to a third mind. The story of the United States itself is a testament to this principle. As a small group of determined men, Adams, Hancock, and Jefferson, aligned their minds in perfect harmony to birth a nation against all odds. The analysis here reveals a vital lesson. Your environment is either your laboratory for success or your prison of mediocrity. If you surround yourself with poverty-conscious individuals, their vibrations will inevitably contaminate your own. To grow rich, you must consciously curate a brain trust that challenges, inspires, and harmonizes with your highest ambitions. The story then pivots into the most controversial and misunderstood chapter of the human experience, sex transmutation. The narrative describes sex as a divine energy, the most powerful of all human stimulants. Hill argues that the desire for sex is so potent that when it is redirected, or transmuted from physical expression into other creative and professional outlets, it can elevate a person to the status of a genius. He observes that the most successful men in history were those who possessed highly developed sex natures but learned the art of redirecting that energy. This is the story of the magnetism of the greats, the charisma of a Lincoln or the drive of a Napoleon. The analysis suggests that most men do not find their stride until the age of 40 or 50 because they spend their younger years dissipating this vital force in pursuit of physical gratification. The lesson is one of radical self-mastery. By channeling the intensity of our most primal drive into our definite major purpose, we create an unstoppable momentum that others mistake for magic. As we descend deeper into the mechanics of the mind, the narrative explores the mysterious subconscious mind. It is depicted as a silent, 24-hour recording studio that captures every thought, emotion, and vibration you experience. It does not argue, it simply accepts. If you feed it the negative seeds of fear and lack, it will faithfully produce a harvest of poverty. If you feed it the positive seeds of wealth and abundance, it will tap into the infinite intelligence to manifest that reality. Hill describes the subconscious as the connecting link between the finite mind of man and the vast, universal storehouse of all knowledge. This is where the secret truly resides. The story of Thomas Edison is woven back into the narrative. A man who failed 10,000 times to invent the light bulb but never considered himself a failure. Edison understood that his subconscious was working in harmony with a higher intelligence, and each failure was simply a piece of data being processed toward the final solution. The lesson learned is that we must become gatekeepers of our own minds, ruthlessly filtering out any thought that does not serve our ultimate goal. The psychological intensity reaches a peak with the concept of the brain as a broadcasting and receiving station for thought. Just as a radio captures invisible waves from the air, the human brain is capable of picking up thought vibrations released by other brains. Hill posits that when a mind is stimulated through emotion, whether it be the heat of desire or the thrill of imagination, it vibrates at a higher frequency, making it more receptive to ideas and hunches. This is the realm of the creative imagination, the gateway to the sixth sense. The narrative describes the great masters of history as those who could tune their receivers to the frequency of the universe, catching flashes of inspiration that transformed the world. This segment of the story is an invitation to view ourselves not as isolated individuals, but as nodes in a cosmic network of intelligence, but to reach this state of superconsciousness. The narrative warns that one must first defeat the 6 ghosts of fear that guard the threshold. These ghosts are the archetypal shadows that have haunted humanity since the dawn of time: the fear of poverty, criticism, ill health, loss of love, old age, and death. Hill describes these fears as nothing more than states of mind, and because they are mental constructs, they can be dismantled. The story focuses on the most paralyzing of these, the fear of poverty. It is the greatest of the 6, a ghost that kills ambition, destroys self-reliance, and leads to permanent misery. The analysis reveals that the only way to banish these ghosts is through a decision, the absolute refusal to host them in your mind. The lesson is that indecision is the seedling of fear. When you make a definite decision to achieve a goal, the ghosts of fear lose their power over you. The narrative flow continues with a warning about susceptibility to negative influences, which Hill calls the 7th basic evil. This is the habit of leaving the mind's back door open to the opinions and discouragements of others. The story tells of the millions of people who fail because they are too polite to ignore the negativity of friends and relatives. To succeed, one must build a firewall around their consciousness. This is the willpower phase of the journey, where the character of the seeker is forged in the fire of self-discipline. The intensity of the storytelling underscores the fact that this is a war, a battle for the control of your own mental territory. The analysis suggests that the true gold is not the money in the bank, but the person you become in the process of mastering these principles. As we move toward the final synthesis, the narrative brings us back to the legendary Andrew Carnegie and the secret he entrusted to Napoleon Hill. The secret is not a magical incantation or a lucky charm, it is the realization that man has absolute control over but one thing, and that is his own thought. This is the master key that opens every door. The story of the Think and Grow Rich philosophy is the story of the democratization of power. It tells the listener that greatness is not reserved for the chosen few, but for anyone who is willing to organize their mind and take action. The psychological tension is now directed outward, challenging the listener to step into the arena and apply these laws to their own life. The characters of the book, the Fords, the Edisons, the Carnegies, are no longer distant figures of history, they are our mentors, our mastermind partners across time. The narrative has transformed from a report on success into a living, breathing philosophy of life. The lesson learned is that riches come in many forms: money, peace of mind, healthy relationships, and spiritual harmony, but none of them can be possessed until the mind is ready to receive them. We are standing at the precipice of the final part of our journey, where we will unlock the mysteries of the 6th sense and face the ultimate truth of the invisible counselors. The air is thick with the vibration of possibility, and the path forward is clear. To think is the beginning, but to grow rich is the destiny of those who refuse to yield. The story continues as we move into the apex of Hill's findings, the spiritual side of success that connects the individual mind to the infinite intelligence of the cosmos. The narrative reaches its final and most mystical peak as it ascends to the 6th sense, the apex of Napoleon Hill's 20-year research. This is the realm where the mechanical meets the spiritual, where the thinking truly becomes growing. The story shifts from the tangible world of spreadsheets and steel mills into the ethereal cabinet meeting of the mind. Hill describes a practice so intense it borders on the supernatural. Every night, before sleep, he would close his eyes and imagine himself at a long table, surrounded by his invisible counselors. These were not mere hallucinations, but the archetypal figures of history: Lincoln, Emerson, Socrates, and Darwin. In this mental sanctuary, Hill would consult these giants, asking for their wisdom, their courage, and their foresight. The storytelling captures the eerie, visceral moment when these imaginary figures began to take on a life of their own, offering advice and hunches that Hill could not have known through logic alone. This is the birth of the creative imagination, the state where the human brain becomes a receiver for the infinite intelligence. The analysis reveals a startling truth: We are never truly alone in our quest for greatness. By consciously aligning our subconscious with the frequencies of the greats, we tap into a universal reservoir of knowledge that exists outside of time. The lesson learned is that the sixth sense is not a gift for the few, but a skill developed through the mastery of the previous 12 principles. It is the reward for the self-discipline of holding a singular, burning desire in the face of a doubting world. The narrative moves toward the final conflict, the clearing of the mind for the reception of riches. Before the spirit can soar, it must be purged of the 6 ghosts of fear that serve as the ultimate guardians of the status quo. The story paints a vivid, psychological portrait of these shadows: the fear of poverty, which paralyzes the will; the fear of criticism, which kills the imagination; and the fear of death, which robs life of its meaning. Hill describes these not as external enemies, but as states of mind that we have the absolute power to control. The intensity of this segment lies in the realization that most people live their entire lives as prisoners in a jail where the door is already unlocked. We see the tragedy of the indecision that breeds these ghosts, and the procrastination that keeps them fed. The analysis provides a sharp, cold water wake-up call: you cannot be success-conscious and fear-conscious at the same time. You must choose. The lesson is that nature has provided man with absolute control over but one thing, and that is thought. Everything else, money, health, reputation, is a byproduct of how we exercise that control. The story of the Think and Grow Rich philosophy concludes by returning us to the office of Andrew Carnegie, where the young Hill first accepted the challenge. We see that the true gold was never the steel industry or the millions of dollars. The true gold was the master key to the human mind. As the narrative synthesis completes, it addresses the 7th basic evil: the susceptibility to negative influences. This is the brain-picking of the world, the silent, invisible poison of the doubters and the naysayers. The story urges a radical, almost militant protection of one's mental environment. It demands that we build a firewall of wool around our consciousness, refusing to let any thought enter that does not harmonize with our definite major purpose. The psychological intensity here is found in the loneliness of the achiever, the period where you must believe in your vision even when no one else can see it. But as the story shows, once you cross that threshold, the world ceases to be an obstacle and becomes a servant. The analysis reminds us that riches, when they come in huge quantities, are never the result of hard work. Riches come, if they come at all, in response to definite demands, based upon the application of definite principles. This is the secret in its simplest form: the universe does not reward trying, it rewards becoming. The core message and meaning of Think and Grow Rich is that the mind is the only factory that matters. Napoleon Hill intends to convey that wealth is not a matter of luck, birthright, or even education in the traditional sense. It is a matter of mental alchemy, the process of transmuting an intangible thought impulse into its physical and financial equivalent. The book is a manifesto of human agency, declaring that every individual possesses the master key to unlock any door, provided they have the courage to organize their thoughts, back them with a burning desire, and persist until the goal is reached. It teaches us that the only real poverty is the poverty of the imagination, and the only true riches are the ones we create within ourselves before they appear in our hands. The story ends with a powerful realization: the secret has been hiding in plain sight all along. It is not something you find, it is something you are. You are the master of your fate and the captain of your soul because you have the power to control your thoughts.